Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Justin Davis, and I know the title of my channel says Drone Camps RC, but I have to tell you that I've been an airplane guy since I was 6 years old, and I started flying multi-rotors almost over 10 years ago now. So I've been in it since the very beginning, but airplanes are what I started out with, and they are my first loves. You can see on my necklace right here, I've got the Wright brothers necklace. I'm from about an hour away from Kitty Hawk, and I grew up flying airplanes off the sand dunes and sailplanes and bungee launch planes. My first plane was an 8-foot glider from my dad, and my mom and my dad were divorced at the time, but yeah, so you know how that stuff goes. But I have the Cessna 162 here today, and we're gonna review this one on the channel, and I'm gonna fly it with some FPV on there. I've got a camera on there for you guys to see, so you get a pilot's perspective. And I'm gonna talk about the pros and cons about this plane. We're gonna talk about what's good about it, what's bad about it, all that stuff. So the big thing that you have to know about this plane is it's actually, for the kit, no electronics, with a balsa interior, EPO construction. It is tough as nails. I smacked it down out here on our AMA runway today, and it took a beating. I had some real questionable feelings about the way that the motor is mounted in the front. I thought that was going to be the first thing to break, and I thought it was going to be like glass, but it survived all afternoon. So it's 3 o'clock now, and I'm done with the flying for the afternoon. I'm missing the landing gear, which we will talk about a little bit later in this review. Partially my fault in the build.
Yeah, I'm gonna do some FPV.
And we broke a bunch of props. So yeah, it's been one crazy day. So let me show you guys some line of sight, some hand toss crashes out here, and some good FPV flying with this plane. So $65, you can't beat it, and $90 for the entire kit. All you have to do is add a receiver and a battery and your radio. It comes with a motor, ESC, all the good stuff, and servos as well. And it has spot for flaps. So you have a lot of options with it, and it is around 40 inches wingspan with a 3S 2200. Is a fairly common size for any type of park flyer, like from Horizon Hobby or wherever. So good price on this one. Let's go ahead and do some crashes. Then we'll do some line of sight and some FPV. Here we go.
All right, guys, let me give you guys some advice here really quickly. During this line of sight flight test, I had to toss it this time because what happened was my nose wheel turned to the side and the prop kept hitting the ground because they shorted me a blind nut inside this kit. And a blind nut essentially is a flat washer with 2 teeth on the side, sometimes 3. And when you screw a screw in through the threaded inside part of it, it will tighten into a plywood wall. And mainly for RC airplanes, that is for mounting your motor mounts to the firewall or other accessories inside the plane. But I was missing actually a couple out of my kit, but I have to say, line of sight, it flies really great. Another tip is beef up with some extra plywood inside the fuselage, your back landing gear, because mine came off. I only use CA, but really what it needs is epoxy and quite a bit of beefing up on that back landing gear. Let's go for durability test number 2, guys. Really a hard smackdown this time, and let's do the after damage report.
All right, guys, after like some serious lawn dart action on this plane, I thought that the first one we were gonna have a broken motor mount in here. That was really kind of concerning me because the motor mount looks like that super cheap China plastic stuff that would be very brittle and just break on the first crash. And they have these 2 pieces here screwed together to extend the motor out to get it past the cowling. So that's the one thing about it that worried me from my shop building it. And it took me a minute actually to figure out how they had this all set up, because I haven't used this type of motor mount before. But the 2 pieces go together like that, and then you put your screws on the back side of the motor. Just put your motor on before you put this piece on this one, and then you can put these screws on both sides. But what was amazing is that in that crash, this did not break, so it is super durable. The motor didn't crack behind where it's mounted either, which is kind of amazing. And even though it was bent a little bit one direction, you can still see it's kind of bent a little bit. You can still kind of grab onto it and bend it back. It's actually just a little bit flexible. and it will stay in that position. Most RC airplanes, if you don't know it, actually have a little bit, sometimes a lot of torque to one side or the other, depending on which way the prop's spinning. That offsets the rotation of the propeller and keeps your airplane flying straight, which is kind of an odd thing. Sometimes you'll get a bind and fly from Horizon Hobby or somewhere else, and it'll actually have a motor that's torqued off to one side, and people think that something's wrong with the model, but that's actually the way most of them are made. So don't be afraid of that. But if you need to bend it back, you can, and I'm happy with this motor mount. It is holding up quite well.
Okay, my friends, it's time for the FPV flight test. So let's go ahead and put the Cessna 162 up in the air one more time, and let's this time put a camera on there and give you the pilot's perspective from the top of the plane there. I have a total FPV kit down below. If you want to put any FPV on your airplane, I will also suggest an economic pair of goggles for you to start out with. I know a lot of guys at my AMA field are interested in this, but they're not quite sure how to go about it, so I'm going to show you the right stuff to get. But on a day like today, it's a really nice day to fly. It's really sunny. When it's quite overcast, these cameras are analog cameras, so they're not that good. If you spend money on something like DJI digital FPV, you're gonna have an amazing experience. But now I'm on my smallest and bendiest prop, so you notice there's some shaking and some vibration here, and you can clear all of that up if you decide to do this with your Cessna 162. If you use a more dense prop, you need something like an APC electric prop, and it will give you a lot less vibration. But this is also after mine's been slam dunked, 3 times today. So right now at the low end of the throttle is where I see the most jitter in the camera view, but when I come up on 3/4 throttle, it really smooths out a lot, and that may be due to my combination of a flimsy prop and maybe possibly even a bent shaft for the motor mount. Now, some guys at the field mentioned that maybe I should get a metal motor mount for it, and they do make some metal motor mounts that you could mount to this firewall, and you could line it up with the front of your cowling. But the issue there might be that if the plastic part doesn't break, then the metal part's going to break what's behind the plastic, right? So it's going to break your wooden firewall, and then you're going to have to epoxy your wooden firewall back together. So which one would you rather break? Something there in that equation has to break somewhere when we're flying RC planes, and same thing with quads or even RC cars, like RC helicopters, same thing. Sometimes people prefer plastic links over metal ones in certain parts of the heli head, but that's totally up to you what you'd like to do. Some people like to beef their stuff up. You have options to do that. But see, I'm on the higher end of the throttle now, and it's looking a lot better. And again, FPVing it is a really enjoyable experience because it's not a gigantic plane. You can fly it in a smaller field, like a baseball field. You can land it. I was able to land it in about half the distance of this runway at this AMA field. But then again, the way I like to land, and if you have the room to do this, I was always told to go way out and come back around long and low. So you're gonna set up your line toward where you want to land, bleed off some altitude, come down, get yourself nice and straight with the ground, keep the nose up, and just make your landing. But right now I think we'll do one more flyby, and then we'll do another pass, and we'll come back around for a landing. So fly by the tower right there. I always love flying right by myself when I'm flying. Not too close, of course. But the plane flies okay down low as well. I was afraid that it might have some problems with power because it's only on 3S. I honestly wouldn't push this motor to 4S because I think you're gonna make the motor hot. I tried a larger prop with this aircraft, like a 9.5 or a 9 and 4 3/4, I believe. It made the motor hot. So you want to be careful about over propping this motor. And we're running a 20 amp ESC, but it's really smooth on 3S. I would honestly leave it on 3S because I think that's the sweet spot on this plane, and a lot of the most popular park flyer airplanes run on 3S. So nice and gentle landing, and that kind of gives you a good idea of how well the plane flies. It's nice and easy to fly, smooth, and fairly affordable. I love the affordable stuff on my channel. Anytime I can get something cheap to fly, I want to see if I can have fun with it for under $100, and this one is fun for under $100, so I'm really happy with this one. Let's go ahead and do some final thoughts now, guys.
All right, guys, welcome back from my flight test, and now I can give you my final thoughts and we can end up this review. I always give my guys recommendations. If you're gonna buy this plane, if you're looking at buying something that is this large and it costs around $65 to $90, this is a deal. It's under $100. So with that said, there's also some compromises that you're gonna have to make when you buy this plane. You're gonna have to beef up the landing gear. Mine broke off, like I showed you. This bottom piece right here, all it does is just glue to the bottom right there. And if you use CA glue, it's gonna snap off on your first landing. So be prepared for that. You need to probably put some extra plywood up inside the frame and just box it out and make it really beefy with some epoxy. And try to do that as sturdy as you possibly can. I think that building the plane was fun. If you are interested in building an RC airplane with a little bit of balsa interior to it, this one is fun. It has all kinds of layers in here, and it comes in 2 foam halves. So you're gonna put the 2 foam halves together after you've glued in all the balsa parts, and then you're gonna sandwich it together. I use mostly CA on this plane, and I had some pretty good hits, and it did not come apart. So generally I would use a little more epoxy on a long-term build. So if you're gonna buy this for yourself, use more epoxy up front, especially for where the firewall seats into the foam. And the front windshield, you can also just kind of CA that down. The windows were easy to put on. The battery of choice is the 3S2200. And I think the flaps also are ready to go. So if you have 2 extra servos, you can add an extra channel and have 2-stage flaps on here if you want, which is kind of nice. It doesn't really actually, in my opinion, need flaps. It'll just kind of add extra weight to it. And also, I mean, prop size. This is a 7-inch prop, and that was my last prop that I had to fly with today. I broke the stock 8.4 tri-blade prop, but I don't really think that a tri-blade prop is really needed for this plane. You could fly this plane on, say, you could fly it on a dual blade 8.5 inch. Make sure it's a slow flyer prop, because the motor, if you try to use a larger, thicker prop like one of these, this one put too much load on the motor and the motor got hot. So that's one thing to think about. You don't want to overstress this motor, because it is it's not the biggest motor. It is also a 20 amp ESC. So you might be able to run it on 4S, but I would suggest sticking on 3S2200. That seemed to get the CG right. Another thing that I can tell you guys is that I did cut out some foam right up here in the front so that the battery could slide further forward to give me a little more forward CG. And I'm telling you, you can also hand launch this plane. You don't have to take it off from the ground. You can also belly land it like a warbird if you didn't have the retracts. Once it's up in the air, I think that it's a very gentle flyer. If you're gonna fly at line of sight, it was flying really, really nice once I got it trimmed out. Of course, always on your maiden flight, you're gonna have some trim issues when you first put it up. You think everything is all leveled out, all your surfaces leveled out, but then when you put it up in the air, it's just leaning to one side or the other, and you're gonna have to take your radio and trim it out. You're gonna have to look up a video on that if you're brand new to the hobby. But it took me a minute or 2 to trim it out, and then it was flying really nice and smooth. So I think that under $100, I mean, it is what it is, guys. I said that all the time on the channel. It is what it is. So yeah, a $90 buy and fly plane that comes as a kit. It says PMP, but it comes in parts and pieces that you build up yourself. So if you have extra time right now with the COVID thing going on, build yourself a Cessna. And this is actually the model Cessna that I like. The 162 is super cool with this sort of a sharp tail on it. This is my favorite Cessna, and a really cool looking front end. That's kind of a beefed up cowling on the front. Really cool looking, really kind of a scale looking airplane. I dig the decals. Decals are kind of cool. It's a little bit wild, but it helps you see it in the air. So anyway, guys, thanks again for watching my channel. please do click subscribe for all of my RC adventures. We're going to have some fun together and get out of the house and do some flying. Guys, take care. I'm Justin Davis. Be well, be safe, and I'll see you on the next one.